Good morning to you and welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Monday morning. Lovely to see you and thank you for joining us as we continue our adventure through the letter of Paul to the Colossians. Hope you're well and cheerful. I hope you had a great weekend and thank you for being with us this morning. Friends, this Colossians, it's an amazing book. I have to say, I thought 4 chapters, 4 days, but it's not that at all. There's so much in here. We're having to take a bit more time about it, but it's amazing stuff and I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. So we are towards the last few verses now of chapter 2. So without further ado, it's Colossians chapter 2, beginning to read at verse 16, just till the end of the chapter. And Paul writes, "Therefore, do not let anyone condemn you in matters of food and drink, or observing festivals, new moons, or Sabbaths. These are only a shadow of what is to come. But the substance belongs to Christ. Do not let anyone disqualify you, insisting on self-abasement and the worship of angels, dwelling on visions, puffed up without a cause by a human way of thinking, and not holding fast to the head, from whom the whole body, nourished and held together by its ligaments and sinews, grows with a growth that is from God. But if with Christ you died to the elemental spirits of the universe, why do you still live as though you belong to the world? Why do you submit to regulations? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. All these regulations refer to things that perish with use. They are simply human commands and teachings. These have indeed an appearance of wisdom in promoting self-imposed piety, humility, and severe treatment of the body, but they are of no value in checking self-indulgence." And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, the whole substance of Colossians from beginning to end is, I think, summed up in a hymn we used to sing. Cast your eyes upon Jesus, look full on his wonderful face, and the things of the world will go straight at him in the light of his glory and grace. Paul's talk all the way through the book of Colossians is Jesus, 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 Jesus. Absolutely, completely, from beginning to end. He's saying to the Colossians, your focus needs to be on Jesus. He is the answer to all this. Because, he says, various people have come up with various philosophies and ideas and this sort, insisting on this, that and the other, and it's proving to be something of a distraction. But Paul is basically saying, you've got Jesus, therefore what more could you want? And that's what he's saying this morning. Keep your eyes on Jesus at all times. So he starts off by saying, don't let people judge you on the basis of these other things. So what he's basically saying is people are obviously coming along and passing judgment on the Christians, saying that you don't do this food law, you don't do that food law, you don't observe this festival, that moon, and this, that, and the other. And they're looking down on the Christians, they're looking down on them and judging them, if you like, because they don't do this type of thing. And what Paul says is, don't let anyone judge you, basically take the notice, Focus on Jesus. Your righteousness, your status in God is in him. So don't let yourself be condemned, or don't let yourselves be judged by these people. Jesus is on whom we put all our focus. Therefore, as I said in the West Midlands, take the notice of all this, because actually keep your eyes on Jesus at all times. That's the first thing you've got to do. The second thing you should take notice is because what he basically says is, some of these things can have their place. But he says, these things are but a shadow of things to come. And kind of religious ideas and religious rituals, they have their place. But we need to remember that God is the main deal. And Jesus is the one with whom we're worshipping. And therefore, we need to make sure that we keep our eyes focused on him at all times. We sometimes do things that can point us to Jesus. We can have ways of doing things that we can encourage us in our prayers. We can have things that we can do which are good ideas. But we need to remember that these are simply shadows of things that are to come. So Paul talks about things like observing festivals and that type of stuff. But the important thing is to keep your eye focused on Jesus, because he is the real deal. So, firstly he says, take the notice of what the people say about you, because keep your eyes on Jesus for that. Secondly, religious rituals and things, they have their place, but they are simply a shadow of things to come. But if you want to keep your eye on the real deal, keep your eyes on Jesus. Thirdly, he says, don't let yourself be but don't let yourself be disqualified by some of these things. And I think what he means is this, is the Christians were being criticised for not doing this, they were not doing that, not doing the other, for not doing this, all this kind of, self-abasement and worshipping angels and all this type of stuff. And the Christians were being criticised for not doing it. I think the temptation that Christians must have felt is to do some of these things to try and look good, and therefore they were trying to look good to these other people, and therefore they were getting distracted by doing that. By putting their faith on doing these other things, that in a sense that it was distracting them, and they weren't putting as much faith in Jesus. So what he's saying is, don't be distracted. Get over distracted. You might end up being disqualified if you're not careful. So make sure you keep your eyes on Jesus, okay? Don't put your faith in other things. Don't let anything distract you, because it might end up disqualifying you. So don't be tempted to do these things. Again, keep your eyes on Jesus at all times. Then he goes on to say these things are they have no good. They don't actually do, and they're not actually very effective in terms of checking self-indulgence. In that, mortifying the body and doing these things, okay, it can look good in public, and some people find it helpful, but actually at the end of the day, truth be happens, it doesn't work, okay. There is a sinful nature in us all. We all have temptations and frustrations, and we can try and mortify our body, and we can try and do, it goes for all sorts of, and yet actually these things don't actually work. The only thing that works and changes lives is have our hearts changed, which needs to be changed by Jesus. And finally, he also goes on to say that these things perish, but the only thing that doesn't perish is God. Again, so, we can look at these other ideas and all this type of stuff, but at the end of the day, Jesus Christ is the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and the end. He's the everlasting one. The one who was in the beginning, is now, and shall be forever. So if you want something which is eternal, if you want something long-lasting, don't look to these other ideas. Look instead to Jesus, because he is the main deal. So again, it's this book of Colossians. Paul is saying to the Colossians, in no uncertain terms, keep your eyes on Jesus. Sure, there were people coming along with these other ideas about new moon festivals and self-abasements and all these rituals and this type of stuff. And what Paul is saying is, firstly, take the notice. Don't let yourselves be judged by these people. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep your righteousness, keep your faith completely on him. Second thing you've got to do is don't let them distract you, because if you get distracted by these things, you might be tempted to do them and put your faith in other things rather than putting your faith in Jesus. Again, don't let yourself be distracted, because you might end up being disqualified if you're not careful. Keep your eyes focused on Jesus at all times. Thirdly, religious rituals can have their place, but we need to remember that these are but shadows of things to come. Jesus is the main deal. God in Jesus is the one we are worshipping. He is the main deal. So these other things can have their place, they can be helpful, but at the end of the day, they are simply shadows, they're foretastes of things to come. Jesus is the main deal. Fourthly, he says, asceticism and mortifying the body, that kind of, it can have its place, but at the end of the day, in truth be told, it doesn't work. We need to have our hearts changed, and our hearts ultimately are only changed by Jesus. And finally, if we want something long-lasting in our lives, if we want something which is eternal, which will help us in the long term, Jesus Christ is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the beginning and the end. He was there at the beginning of creation. Creation was made for him and in him, and he will be there at the end. It'll be him who returns at the end. He is there at the beginning and at the end as well. So if you want something truly long-lasting, on which to base our lives, Jesus is who we should put our faith in. So again, I come back to where I started. How would Paul say it? I think he'd have been quite happy with that hymn. Cast your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his wonder and grace. And may you know the presence of the risen Jesus with you today. Just with Paul, keep your eyes on him, because he is the main man. God bless you, and have